Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the most sweeping, unprecedented political events of the entire 21st century. Back in 2012, right after the 18th National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party, China launched an anti-corruption campaign that, well, literally re-engineered the mechanics of its state. The sheer scale, the longevity, and quite frankly, the ruthlessness of this initiative caught seasoned political observers completely off guard, and it has fundamentally shifted the geopolitical landscape we all live in today.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Right after taking office, General Secretary Xi Jinping set the tone for his entire administration with this dramatic declaration. He said, "We should continue to catch tigers as well as flies. Power must be caged." Now, this wasn't just some generic political prowess. It was a massive declaration of intent that would very quickly echo through absolutely every layer of Chinese society.
So, to really understand this campaign, you have to grasp this brilliant visual metaphor: tigers and flies. Historically, anti-corruption drives might snag a few low-level offenders, the flies, but they'd leave the really powerful elites, the tigers, completely untouched. Well, this new directive changed all of that. It sent a massive chill through the bureaucracy, signaling that absolutely no one, regardless of their rank, their history, or their political pedigree, was safe from the dragnet. To help us break down this massive geopolitical topic logically, we've structured this explainer into 5 key areas. We're going to look at tigers and flies, breaking the unspoken rules, the enforcement machine, reform or political purge, and finally, a staggering scale.
All right, starting us off with Section 1, Tigers and Flies. Let's look at exactly who got caught up in this. When we take a closer look at the specific behaviors the state decided it could just no longer tolerate, we see the campaign quickly netted over 120 senior officials. We're talking dozens of ministerial-level elites and top executives of central state-owned enterprises. But what exactly were they targeting here? Well, beyond outright bribery, the state basically declared war on what they called the 4 bad work styles. That's formalism, bureaucraticism, hedonism, and extravagance. The campaign aimed to completely destroy this deeply ingrained culture of trading political favors for flashy access and luxury. Moving right along to Section 2, breaking the unspoken rules. Let's move to this and see how it builds, because the timeline is truly shocking. Starting in 2012, the net just widened relentlessly. By 2014, major political titans actually began to fall, but the momentum didn't stop there. Fast forward into the 2020s, and we're seeing sitting defense ministers and top military brass being investigated, right up to 2026 with the arrest of military chiefs. This really proved that the campaign wasn't just a temporary phase, it was an escalating, permanent feature of the state. The massive turning point here arrived with the investigation of Zhou Yongkang in 2014. He was a former national security chief. See, before this, there was an unwritten rule in modern Chinese politics known as PSC criminal immunity. It basically meant that members of the Politburo Standing Committee, literally the absolute highest tier of leadership, were untouchable, especially after they retired. Well, shattering this unspoken rule proved that the ceiling of the campaign had been completely removed. No one was out of reach. And this lack of a ceiling extended directly into the People's Liberation Army. We saw the unprecedented removal of multiple defense ministers and top generals with a heavy focus on corruption within military procurement. Interestingly, the official announcements didn't just cite financial crimes. They used really intense language, things like political disloyalty and a loss of chastity. Obviously, this sweeping purge has raised major international questions about the current operational readiness of China's armed forces. Okay, let's jump into Section 3, the enforcement machine. To actually catch these elites, the state utilized a highly methodical 3-step bureaucratic process. First, central inspection teams are stationed at an organization or province for months at a time. Second, they conduct ruthless audits of official conduct and organizational practices. And finally, once the evidence is gathered, they enact a process called shuanggui. This essentially places the targeted official under isolated detention for grueling interrogation. It's an incredibly organized, systemic net. So the crucial point is that the agency running this whole show, the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection, or CCDI, operates as an internal party organ. This means it functions largely outside the standard judicial system, with expanded powers answering directly to Xi Jinping and an early conviction rate reported at around 99%. Yeah, 99%. The CCDI gathered overwhelming evidence before ever making a public move. It functioned with terrifying efficiency. This immense power was permanently enshrined in 2018 with the creation of the National Supervisory Commission. By merging various anti-graft departments together, the state created an absolute super agency. From a constitutional standpoint, this body shares the exact same status as the State Council, and it actually outranks the national courts and prosecutors.
This brings us to Section 4, Reform or Political Purge.
Now, as an explainer, we aren't taking sides here. Instead, we're neutrally looking at the two primary hypotheses dominating global analysis right now. The big debate is this. Is this campaign a calculated political purge meant to eliminate factional warfare, or is it a genuine, positive structural reform designed to save the party and build robust institutions? Let's look at both arguments.
Let's start with the purge theory. Many academics argue that the campaign acts essentially as a tool to consolidate absolute power. The argument goes that by targeting entrenched patron-client networks like the secretive Shishan Society of Shaanxi officials and signaling that retired party elders are no longer safe, the current leadership is effectively eradicating internal opposition. The end goal? Centralizing absolute control under one undisputed core leadership. On the flip side, proponents of the reform theory argue this massive cleanup was existentially necessary. By reclaiming massive ill-gotten gains and breaking up incredibly inefficient state-owned monopolies, the state restores public trust and its legitimacy to rule. Furthermore, there's a really strong security rationale here. Decades of corruption had literally left officials vulnerable to bribery from foreign intelligence agencies. So in this view, the campaign is absolutely vital institution building.
Finally, let's turn to Section 5. A staggering scale. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer number, 2.3 million. I just want to let the absolute magnitude of that number sink in for a second. 2.3 million. By the year 2023, approximately 2.3 million officials had been prosecuted. To put that into perspective, this is not just some standard policy tweak. It is literally the most extensive, systematic re-engineering of the state apparatus in the entire history of the Chinese Communist Party's governance. We're talking about entire provincial political ecosystems being swept completely clean and replaced. And if you look at the data, this campaign isn't slowing down at all. The numbers have relentlessly escalated year over year. Look at this, from roughly 160,000 disciplined in 2012, climbing to over 600,000 by 2023, and then soaring to nearly 1 million in 2025 alone. The enforcement machine is not winding down, it is actively accelerating. And this brilliantly illustrates the surprising, real-world societal impacts of the campaign. Vanity projects, lavish banquets, and fleets of luxury government cars practically vanished overnight. The campaign enjoyed broad public support, hitting a 71.5% approval rating back in 2016. Amazingly, the crackdown on luxury spending and smuggling was so severe, it was even cited as a primary reason for the crash of global fur prices. No way, right? But it's true. Ultimately, the campaign dismantled the entrenched culture of guanxi, which is the traditional system of exchanging informal gifts and favors to get things done. It completely altered the daily reality of Chinese officialdom. The old moral maze of cultural gift-giving has been fundamentally replaced with a climate of strict, unforgiving compliance.
Which leaves us with the critical question to ponder. With millions disciplined and the numbers still rising well over a decade later, is this just an extended cleanup phase? Or has this enforcement machine simply become the new, permanent reality of how China is governed? Think about that for a while. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to keep exploring this fascinating topic.